As you can see from the diagram here, the way that we often portray the way pain works is through an input, process, output model. And the pain you experience is the output. It's the response of the nervous system, because there's not much that the nervous system can do. We can contract muscles more or less, and this often presents as tension, tightness, and stiffness. And we can secrete hormones. Most familiar is going to be more stress hormones and a fight or flight response when we're in pain. But if this is the response, then the reason why you feel pain has to be from some kind of information coming into your body, or from how that pain is, or information is being processed within the brain. The information coming in is where we do the majority of our work, because we're looking at areas of past trauma and desensitizing that heightened sensitivity so the brain perceives less danger. But in this section, we're going to look at how information is being processed in the brain and how it's being influenced by your emotions and beliefs because of the way that pain impacts our thought processes. Living with pain can impact the way that you think, and thinking is also impacted by symptoms like fatigue and depressed mood. And such symptoms often generate negative or unhelpful thoughts, and so these thoughts may be about the way pain has affected your life, about how pain has changed the way you see yourself, or about how things will be for you in the future. And so what you think can similarly contribute to a worsening of your symptoms. Negative thoughts produce negative emotions, which in turn influence how potential pain signals, known as nociception, get processed in the brain. And if nociceptive signals are processed against a background of negative emotion, then the pain tends to be worse. Now we're going to talk a little bit about automatic thoughts. So when you first learn how to drive a car, ride a bike or kick a ball, it can be difficult to coordinate all of the necessary behaviours to produce the desired performance. And over time, the behaviours become more skillful and the need for thinking about each part of the task becomes unnecessary. When you're able to free your mind from concentrating on a task and just simply do it, we call it automatic thinking. It becomes unconscious. And for many situations, automatic thinking is a good thing as it's highly efficient and frees up our mind to focus on other important matters. But it can have a downside when it comes to pain. When we first develop pain with an injury, we tend to avoid tasks that would make it worse, we avoid social outings that could make it worse, and we often cut back on exercise. We learn that these avoidance-based behaviours can make the pain feel better. And we might also think about how awful the pain feels and how limiting pain can be on our future plans. With time, thoughts, and avoiding activity to avoid pain, these things become automatic. And although avoiding exercise and social activities can help relieve pain when it's acute in the short term, these are exactly the wrong approaches to use for dealing with chronic pain. Here we need to engage in paced physical activity. You need to engage in social activities, and you'll likely need to engage in some form of exercise. When the pain becomes chronic, it's important to become aware of your automatic thoughts and potentially rethink them and reframe them, which is easier said than done. Because automatic thoughts evolve out of learning, and it can be quite difficult to unlearn this pain and challenge these thoughts and retrain your mind to think differently. And automatic thinking can be categorized into specific thinking styles, all of which produce efficiency in thinking, but potentially unwanted negative consequences when it comes to managing your pain. For example, catastrophizing is excessive worry and prediction of a worst case scenario. For example, a person in pain might think that my pain is never going to end, or this is the worst thing that could happen to me. You could have black and white thinking, which is when we see only one of two possible outcomes, one very good and one very bad. And we know that few things in life are actually this way. Instead, outcomes usually fall along a range that can have varying degrees of goodness or badness. And often, negative things also have some good parts to them, we just don't see them. People who think this way might note that everything went wrong today, even if only thing went wrong that day. The next example is ignoring the positive. which is when a person focuses only on the negative events and ignores the positive events. For example, think about the person who, despite their pain, leaves their house, joins friends for lunch, and has a wonderful time. But they have to cut the outing a bit short due to their pain. A person who ignores the positive and magnifies the negative would focus on having cut the outing short and would discount the positive events of enjoying the fact that they had time with their friends and they were out for a substantial amount of time. It just happened to be cut short. We can also have prediction-based issues, where we decide how an event will turn out before it's even happened. And this is especially a problem when we predict a negative outcome. For example, an individual might wake up and think, well, I know today is going to be a bad day. I know if I do that task, it's going to hurt, despite no sign that today will be better or worse than the day before, because how do you know? We also have should statements. And these are when people use the word should, frankly, too much. I should do this, or I must do that. And these thoughts create feelings of pressure, stress, and frankly, resentment. Thoughts about what a person should or should not do can be especially upsetting because abilities change with pain conditions, but often expectations for what one should be able to accomplish don't change. And so we often get this learned helplessness with chronic pain, where we become, or we have the sense of powerlessness and inability to do anything because the pain is the king and the pain rules the roost and the pain owns my body. And you become disattached to your own body because the pain now rules you. When really we need to flip this narrative and actually begin to recognize that you are the one who is controlling a lot of these thoughts, which is driving this perceived threat, which is what pain is all about. Pain is about your perceived amount of danger. And if within the clinic we've established that, look, there's no damage there, then one part of the process is reframing these emotions and behaviors that have been learned. It's not that your personality is a negative personality. Anyone who had pain for that long would think this way because pain is painful. We don't like it. It's no good. And so we're going to get these negative thoughts. But having exercises and an awareness of what to do is really the key, and that's what we're going through here. Each of these automatic thinking styles that we've just gone through can lead to a more generic negative automatic thinking style. And such a negative approach to thinking will likely generate negative emotions, which in turn is, of course, going to make your pain worse. Now, when we discuss the importance of monitoring or changing this negative automatic thinking, we don't mean to imply that you should be blissfully ignorant about your pain or think unrealistically. Really, it's quite the opposite, and it's best to be heavily grounded in the reality of your life situation, which oftentimes is not as awful as your negative automatic thoughts would have you believe. We want to really get a sense of the reality and not the perceived reality. And so the intent here is a few things. We want to be aware of your thinking because it can influence your feelings and therefore your symptoms. And secondly, if you identify any of the negative patterns that I've spoken about here, we want to attempt to challenge them before they take you down an unnecessary negative path. And in order to be efficient, automatic thinking leaves out a lot of information. So if the situation changes, like your pain going from an acute problem to a more chronic problem, your learned automatic thoughts for the acute pain may be quite inaccurate when it becomes chronic. Because in chronic pain, there's usually no more tissue damage. The damage is gone, it's been healed, but the pain continues. In most cases, problematic automatic thoughts exaggerate the negative aspects and minimize the positive aspects. And this creates unnecessary and an inaccurate imbalance of thoughts that focus on negative emotions or outcomes. And so just as negative thoughts can drive negative behaviors, positive thoughts can drive positive behaviors. So if a person with pain believes they can function or see an improvement in their pain, they're more likely to do the things that will improve their quality of life. Having more positive thoughts, therefore, gives you the greatest opportunity to get better and makes the most of the life that's in front of you. So there's a few strategies that we're going to take to try to shift you towards this more kind of positive automatic thinking. The first approach is to reframe your thoughts. And this is a really important strategy for managing this process. And anyone who uses this strategy works to balance their way of thinking so that it's not just negative. So we need to not only first stop the negative thoughts, let go of the frustration and upset, and think about, well, what can I do? What action steps can be taken? And really we must do this because negative thinking will make the pain feel worse. And remember, the pain is generally never as bad as it was originally. You've just forgotten what it was like because you live with it 24/7. Even if it's just starting to return, we have to not catastrophize. We need to understand it and realize that it's not going to be as bad as it was because we're going to take control and we're going to take some action steps. And really what we really want to do is see the pain as a reminder to take that care of yourself, because that's all it is. It's an alarm letting us know that something isn't quite right. You know, it's like the oil light coming on in your car. There's no need to panic if the light comes on. It's just a case of, I need to now do something to make that light turn off. And so originally, if pain was your enemy, you know, it ruled your life and it ruled your body and it was unbearable, we really need to reframe pain to being your friend. It's the warning light. You can say thank you to your body for letting me have this warning signal that something isn't quite right. And then I can do what I need to do to take the strain away from the body, which may not necessarily be physical. It might be mental, emotional, social, so that the pain can go away. And now we're going to go through how we do that. And we've got 3 exercises we're going to use. We're going to use the ABCDE model. We're going to look at a protectometer model. And we're also going to try to reframe the pain with an appreciation of what it's done for you. The ABCDE model is the first exercise that we're going to go through, and it's to help us shift from pessimism to optimism. So A stands for adversity, the situation that triggers the response. B stands for beliefs, our thoughts and interpretation of the situation. C stands for consequences, the way that we feel or behave as a result. D stands for dispute, our effort to argue and dispute those beliefs. And E stands for energy, the outcome from redirecting these thoughts in the first place. So what we tend to do is blame A, our adversity, for C, our consequences, failing to acknowledge often that the fact that B, our beliefs, are actually what causes the way we feel and the consequences. So we miss the step B and we jump from A to C. Now this is quite a stoic mentality, because it's never the situation that causes the way that we feel. It's our beliefs about said situation that cause our thoughts. And this is why we don't all respond the same way to the same situation. The most immediate benefit of this method is realizing that you can choose how you think about a situation, which also means you can create new patterns of thinking, reinforce positive patterns, and change negative ones. The goal of the ABCDE isn't to sugarcoat life, but to take a closer look at all the possibilities and allow us to weigh our options up before accepting our own perceptions. Because remember, the perception you accept is actually just up to you. Learning to consider these alternative explanations for adverse events and to choose the one that's most variable and specific rather than stable is the key to increasing our optimism. Because in order to be able to effectively dispute your thoughts and beliefs in a variety of situations, you can set out to find concrete evidence that your beliefs are faulty. And becoming skilled at essentially arguing with yourself is the key to this technique. Because in order to effectively dispute your own pessimistic thoughts, you must first be able to recognize them, and then to treat these thoughts as if someone else had said them to you. So you get a third person perspective on them, and then you get a bit of logic and think, what the hell was I thinking? Because we're often better able to dispute what other people say to us than what we say to ourselves. One way to argue with yourself when you identify a belief is to ask yourself the questions, what's my evidence for this belief? And what alternative ways can I look at this situation? Because when you identify a pessimistic belief that's warranted, you might then ask yourself, well, what does this negative event really mean? Is the outcome as negative as I'm making it out to be? Or how useful is it for me to dwell on this negative event or belief? In this exercise, you're being asked to really pay attention to any adverse experiences that you've had over the course of either previously or on the future, and how that's led us to see the consequences and what we thought because of B, the beliefs. So we're going to go through this, figure out the event, the belief it created, the consequence of how it made you feel, and then figure out a way of really disputing that current belief in order to feel more energized on the back end and optimistic about the situation in the first place. So we're going to take a look in a little bit closer detail. So to start with, let's try and find an example of a time when you had an adverse event or a really painful period. So let's start with number 1 or A, adversity. So I want you to get a piece of pen and paper and write down the event. What was that recent adversity? And the more specific and detailed, the better. We want to include the who was there, what happened, when did it happen, where did it happen, the who, the what, the when, the where. The more accurate the description, the better. And at this point, try not to let your beliefs or subjective judgment of the situation creep in. We just want facts. We want to be really objective, really kind of truth-based statements, because we want just pure, this is who was there, this is what happened, etc., etc. Once we've done that, we can then move on to B, beliefs. So now we're going to start looking at what were you saying to yourself in the middle of that adversity? What was the internal chatter? What was running through your mind? And I want you to write it down as you have said it in your head. Doesn't matter, what it was. Oh man, this always happens. Well, I'm always in pain when I do that. These type of things that you might say, oh well, I can't do that because I know it's going to hurt. Or the last time I did it hurt, so it's going to hurt this time. Or there's no way I'm going to finish walking all the way down that road. Or there's no way I can pick up that object. All these things that you might just say to yourself in your head. We want to get as much detail based on that one event as possible. Then we're going to move on to C, consequences. We're now going to think about what did those thought patterns and beliefs do? How did they make you feel? So really specific. Now we're looking at emotions. We want to list all the emotions you experienced and the reactions that you had as a consequence. Okay? Sad, angry, frustrated, apathetic. And then we really want to start asking ourselves, do those consequences make sense given the beliefs that you had? So does it make sense to feel sad because you've said, I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life? Well, of course it is. That definitely makes sense. We can see the logic there, okay? So for example, the example could be, I really felt worse and really, really terrible thinking this way. And I began to not take any action or do anything else, avoid social interaction that I wanted to do or needed to do that day. I felt pretty low and I began comparing myself to people that aren't in pain and all the things that they can do. And so there was then a comparison of me to other people. And yes, these feelings and actions do make sense given the beliefs that I had. So we want to compare the consequences that you feel with the belief, and does it make sense? Okay. Before we can then move on to D, dispute. We're now going to generate some evidence to point out the inaccuracy in those beliefs, or generate a more accurate and optimistic alternative belief about the adversity. Essentially putting that belief into perspective. Yeah. So, for example, you could say, well, that belief is not completely true because. That's not completely true, because I know a lot of things that I have done that haven't hurt, or I have been able to walk X amount of distance, I just couldn't complete the whole thing. So we're really looking for alternatives, a more accurate way of seeing it, you know? We want to try and put it into perspective. The most likely outcome of doing that task is I get a small amount of pain, but actually I can handle that. It's not the end of the world, and it's just a sensation and it's a feeling, and I recognize that there's actually no damage there. So there's no need to catastrophize, because I know that even if I do it and it hurts, it's actually not making anything worse at all. And then finally, to finish, we want to look at E, energy. Once we've managed to reframe, dispute, get clarity, put into perspective these beliefs that we've had, we now want to write down a little bit of how has that potentially changed how you feel. Has it changed your mood? Does your behavior change? And what solutions do you now see that perhaps were unconscious to you before? And remember to always use this third person perspective of, well, what if someone said that belief to me about what they were going through? What would I say back to them? What perspective would I give them? So kind of take yourself out of your own shoes. Yeah. So in terms of energy, you could be thinking, well, my energy has become more focused and clear. I felt more competent in my abilities to deal with the pain, and the future doesn't look so bleak. My behavior changed because now I'm starting to do more activities. I'm gradually exposing myself to exercise, and I'm starting to interact in social events, but I'm putting a time limit on it, and I'm not going crazy, but I'm gradually exposing myself bit by bit, more and more. So that's the A, B, C, D, E exercise. And so it's really important that you take some time and get familiar with this exercise, because anytime you are having an adverse event or a flare-up or anything like that, it really gives us an opportunity and a chance to analyze our own belief systems and figure out, why am I experiencing pain when clearly there's no damage? So remember, going back to the input, process, output model. Pain is because either we've got information coming in, which is faulty, which is our job in the clinic. We're going to help desensitize past traumas, injuries that might be making your brain think there's more danger than there actually is. But what we can't control is what goes on inside your head. So you need to do these exercises to shift your emotions and belief patterns to get into that more optimistic frame of mind, because we don't want to exacerbate the pain. So the next exercise that we're going to go through to try and change our perspective on our pain is almost an appreciation or reframing of the pain and not ignoring what it might have done for you. And so we're going to break this down into 5 separate kind of categories. So it's another written exercise that we'd like you to do. And the first thing we're going to look at is learning. So this is the kind of first subtitle, if you like. Really what we want you to think about here is, what has pain or being in pain taught you? What has it kind of brought to your awareness and understanding? What have you had to learn about in a positive sense that's affected you? For example, learning about pain, what you're doing right now. Because in the future, we're going to have pain again at some point in our lives. We're all going to experience it multiple times. You're going to understand it better, and it's less likely to become chronic. You've had to learn about your own body. You've had to learn about your own health, your own physiology. You've had to learn about exercise. You've had to learn about, what do I have to do to get out of pain? Hopefully through this website and through your sessions in the clinic, you're learning a lot. So just have a think about what you've learned about yourself. Maybe you've learned that you cope really well with pain. Maybe you've learned that you have a low pain threshold. Maybe you've learned that you really hate being in pain. But you have quite strong willpower to, get through it. And so you've actually figured out that, wow, my kind of willpower is really, really strong, because even though I'm in a lot of pain, I'm doing a lot. And even though that's exacerbating the pain, not ideal, you've still learned something positive about your own personality. And so that's the first thing. L, learning. Figure out what have you learned, okay? Next thing is advantages. Now, when I say the advantages to being in pain, you might think, oh, well, there is none. But if you look closely enough, there is plenty. There always is. For example, when I'm in pain, my partner does everything for me. They really help me out. I don't have to do the dishes. They are cooking for me. They're checking in on me. Everyone's really caring. Everyone's asking who I am. It means that I don't have to go to those social events that I was looking for an excuse for anyway. Perhaps even within a workplace setting, it means that you're getting extra help. You're getting some kind of changes within that field. So try to think of what advantages this pain has brought you. It could just be that it's given you a chance to open up to people and talk to people a little bit more. For people that, people who might live on their own and they don't get much social interaction, maybe being in pain has allowed you to go and see people to talk about your pain, doctors, ourselves, anybody, and that's given you some social interaction. So just spend some time thinking about, okay, if I were to ignore the fact that I don't want to be in pain, what are the advantages of this? What has it given me that I couldn't have had if I wasn't in pain? Okay, so really try and analyse that. And of course, if you need any help with any of this, then speak to us in clinic and we'll be able to kind of guide you more specifically because we'll know your case on an individual basis. The next thing is to look at growth. This is the third subtitle. We had learning, advantages, and now growth. Okay? Growth as in, how is going through this painful period pushing you to grow as a person? I don't mean feeling good because, if you're in pain, you don't generally feel good. But it will be helping you develop as a person with some degree of self-development to understand yourself, And growth, as we know, happens outside of our comfort zone. It doesn't happen easily. Growth is not an easy thing, okay? But it should help you realize your errors within your lifestyle that might have led you to be this way. So in terms of growth, what it's taught you is, I really wasn't moving enough. I haven't been exercising, and now I know all the things that I need to do to get to a better place. I recognize the impact of nutrition and what that's done to my health. I recognize the fact that me sitting in front of a computer for 9 hours straight is probably not the best thing. So really what this section is about is the realizations that being in pain has taught you. What has it taught you about yourself? And what has it shown you that you need to do to grow as a person? Okay, what lifestyle shifts need to be made? The next subtitle is E, evolve. And kind of on a similar basis, how is this taking you from where you are now and evolving to be better? Generally, for someone in pain, this is going to be more of a health and lifestyle shift towards what action steps am I looking to take to get a better balance in my life? Whether that's getting up more regularly, changing the nutrition, exercises, understanding yourself, all these things. How are you evolving as a person? And finally is responsibility. That's the last kind of subtitle we're going to talk about. And I just want you to think about, how have you become more responsible as a result of being in pain? What have you had to do that you weren't doing before? Okay, I've had to be really, really dedicated and do my mobility every day. I've had to be really, really responsible for myself in that I'm getting up every 20 minutes, having a little walk around. I'm responsible in that I'm turning up to my appointments and actually getting the help that I need. I'm responsible in that I'm doing this exercise in the first place. Someone who goes through these resources is just much more likely to get out of pain because I know they're being responsible and they're taking onus of their own situation and they're not taking their health in or putting the responsibility of their health in another person. You should be starting to realize that you are the master controller. You might need a little bit of help along the way. We might have to help your nervous system desensitize from stuff that's happened in the past. But ultimately, your thoughts and beliefs play a very, very big role when it comes to this chronic pain. And so this is the last subtitle. Think about responsibility. What has it done for you? The amount that you've had to be responsible about, even how much you go out, for example. Like, okay, I can't go out to the pub all night because I'm going to have to sit there and I'm being really responsible. I'm going to go home because then I can get up, walk around, pace myself. Silly things, right? So run through this: learning, advantages, growth, evolution, and responsibility. And any problems, let us know. The next exercise that we're going to look at to try to change our perceptions about the pain that we're experiencing is using the Protectometer worksheet, which you'll see attached here to download. And really what this is breaking down your pain into two things, which we call DIMs and SIMs. DIM means danger in me, and SIM means safety in me. And we're going to try to figure out all the things that you perceive as dangerous and all the things that you perceive as safe, and try and shift them around. Because what we know is that pain is experienced when the weighing scales in the brain perceive more danger than safety. And so the first thing is recognition of what we think those things are. And so we're going to break that down into some categories, and there's lots of examples here on the worksheet that you can work through. So first of all, we can look at the things that we hear, see, smell, taste, and touch, our senses. We can look at the things you do, the things you say, the things you think and the things that you believe, places you go, people in your life, and your current biological state. And so the examples of negative thought patterns on these things could be: the things that I see is my X-ray report, or I've heard from the GP that I have degeneration, arthritis, and wear and tear. The things I do is take tablets, take painkillers, take ibuprofen, and stay home all the time. Okay, that's what I do. It's really, really bad. It's danger in me, okay? And the things that you say, which is a really, really interesting one, where, it's just old age. This is normal when you get past X age. Or it's just wear and tear. Or, it's my own fault. Or just these things that these kind of throwaway statements that are said that actually have a lot of power and a lot of weight, because it really shows what your brain is thinking. So writing them down can be sometimes quite revelationary to figure out, well, is that what I really think? Because when you put a bit of logic on it, you realize that it's nonsense most of the time. The things that you might believe, that you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. Pain is forever, and it's only going to get worse, and there is no hope. You might believe those things. The places you go, the doctors, to see us, that might be a dim for you, even coming into the clinic, because you're in pain. But it's important to write it down and figure out if it is one, okay? The people in your life, okay? It could be, it's a little bit more of a difficult one, I have to say, to figure out if there's any dangers in terms of the people in your life. But this could be anything, to be honest with you, that's affecting your pain. It doesn't have to be direct. So remember, being in pain is also about the fact that you are being affected in your whole lifestyle. So is there, a relationship issue? That can be a dim, because when pain becomes chronic, it's less about the physical and more about the whole being. And so being in an unhappy relationship or having some issues with people at work all play a role in our perceived threat. And it means the nervous system is more likely to tense up and give us pain. And so DIMS in this case could be a colleague, a family member, a partner, could be anything, okay? And then we want to look at our actual biological state. So the fact that perhaps you feel a little bit anxious, depressed, down because of this feeling. And so these are really our dims. But then we want to take our dims and try and shift them into sims. So things that you might see, hear, taste kind of with your senses is that, well, actually my scan is all clear. That you've heard from us that even with the scan results, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be in pain forever. Okay? We could think about the things that you are doing, the exercises that you're doing, the proactive approach that you're taking, the fact that you're listening to this video. They're all things that you're doing and they're all sims. But everyone's sims are going to be a little bit different. Okay? And try to think about the positive things that you say, the safety messages that you say, or that perhaps you need to start saying, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you're on the path to recovery, the fact that you actually even understand what the hell's going on now. You know, that's a big, big part of getting better. Things that you might think or things that you might believe. That injuries heal within 3 to 6 months. Okay? Really good to understand that. Hopefully, the fact that you trust in us to help you get out of pain. Things that you believe, really kind of positive beliefs that you might have about your situation. Places that you go. Okay, maybe you're still going to the gym. You've just had to modify what you're doing. Maybe you go dancing. Maybe you go to the beach for walks. Could be anything. Who knows? Maybe even coming to the clinic. Could be a safety thing, you know? I feel good for doing that, okay? The people in your life that are helping you, okay? People that understand you, people that listen to you, people that support you, okay? And biologically, you know, the fact that you feel optimistic about the future. And so use this protectometer sheet attached to start to understand what your brain is doing, what are the dangers it's seeing, and see if you can reframe those perspectives, even in reference to the other exercises that we have done in this series, and turn them from dims to sims.